Have you ever felt like you were a fraud, or perhaps you're doubting your ability to do something that you've done many times before? Well, you could be suffering from something known as imposter syndrome. What exactly causes it, and what are the steps to take to overcome it? We'll be chatting about that with Leah C4, who is a life and relationship coach, joining us in studio today. Leah, good to have you with us.
Hi, nice to be here.
Imposter syndrome, it sounds quite dramatic, but what exactly are we talking about there?
Imposter syndrome is simply having a false belief that you are not as capable or as smart as other people think you are.
Okay.
So you have a very small picture of yourself. You keep yourself in a very limited belief system of what you think you're capable of. Even if your CV looks fantastic, even if you've got the qualifications and your boss has high expectations of you, you keep thinking you're not as good as they think you are,
Right.
and they're going to find out.
Okay.
So it builds a huge amount of anxiety every day, because it's like you're waiting for them to find out that you're not as good,
Right.
or that you're not as great a partner as your partner thinks you are, and one day they're going to find out and then be disappointed and leave you.
Right. Right.
So it's not a medical a condition. It's not a diagnosis. What it is simply a negative belief system.
Okay.
It's just a disempowered way of thinking about yourself that's really never based in fact.
So you're not actually ever going out and actively being an imposter in a situation, but you believe that you are.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And genuine imposters don't believe that they're imposters.
Right, yes, yeah.
so the fact that you even think it is the signal that you aren't it, if that makes sense.
Okay, yes.
It's just a hyper awareness of not wanting to let people down. And it is getting worse and worse. I can tell you that every single person I've ever worked with has this.
Right.
This is not something that only affects a small percent of the population. Everybody feels that they are not good enough in some area of their life.
Yeah.
I see it really does play out mostly though in the professional capacity at work.
And what is the root cause of this syndrome?
I think there's a lot of reasons around why imposter syndrome is there, and for everybody it's different, but I really feel comparison is the biggest problem. You are constantly comparing yourself to somebody else in your industry or to somebody else in your friend group who's doing that same thing, but in your eyes doing it better than you.
Okay.
So this comparison of I'm not like them, well, I would hope you're not like them, because if there was only ever one way to do something properly, there would only ever be one doctor or one life coach or one public speaker, you know. So we kind of set up this weird bar of what is acceptable, what's perfect, and what is right. And then we seek to compare ourselves against that. And the ridiculousness about the comparison is that very often we're not even in the arena with the person doing the thing.
Right.
So we are comparing ourselves with somebody without ourselves engaging the action to know what that comparison actually looks like. It's a head game.
It's
a
very
total
interesting
head game.
that, yeah. And I can imagine sort of anxiety is a massive consequence of it.
Yeah.
And that sort of feeling of being overwhelmed by things. How does that interplay?
You know, that overwhelm is being very clear on what expectations you're living up to here. So if your boss wants you to do something, don't just say yes. You know, be clear and go, okay, what is it you're actually wanting me to do? What are your expectations around the deliverables here? So that I can say whether or not I can do that. Because what happens is people don't want to let their bosses or their partners or their parents down. And they go, absolutely, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And then go and have a nervous breakdown in the corner, go, but I can't do it, and I don't know how to say I can't do it. So one of the big things of overcoming imposter syndrome is a vulnerability and a willingness to go, you know, I don't know. I don't think I'm the right person for this. I don't think I have the skill set for this. And discussing it with the person who has that expectation, and that's how you manage the overwhelm.
Right.
Is getting a lot more specific and being totally honest about your capabilities. And the big problem with imposter syndrome is people put a lot of stuff into their feelings instead of the facts. So just because you feel it or think it, it doesn't mean you are it.
Okay.
So you might think you're stupid, it doesn't mean you are. You might feel like you failed, it doesn't mean you have. So be very careful of believing what you feel or think. And separate out the fact versus fiction of what is really going on versus what I'm trying to convince myself is going on.
Okay. What are the fundamental areas where people are most impacted if they suffer from this imposter syndrome?
I would definitely say work.
Okay.
I think work is a thing. The job market is competitive. People within a corporation are competing to get the next promotion. And people want to oversell themselves in job interviews. And then they arrive to start the job, and maybe there were a few white lies on the CV, or maybe they oversold themselves and then they can't actually deliver. and then they're scared that somebody else is going to find that out and use it against them in the workplace. So a level of honesty is required when you're going through the interviews. A level of honesty is required once you're in the job. Is to sit with your senior or your direct report to say, right, this is what you hired me to do. In these areas, here's are things I'm not great with. These are things I'm really good with. And just so you know up front to manage your expectations of me.
Okay.
So I think that's really important to discuss that, not just trying to live up to somebody else's view, because then you will constantly feel like you're not good enough.
Now, if somebody watching is sort of suspecting that they might be suffering from this, is there some sort of maybe a checklist that we could look at, things to keep an eye out for so that we can then act on them in a positive way?
Absolutely. I think the first thing is when you feel that imposter syndrome energy coming up in you, simply start thinking like a non-imposter. So how is someone who doesn't have this syndrome, how would they be saying what I'm about to say, or how would they be doing what I'm about to do?
Okay.
So it's great to think of, put yourself in the mind of a non-imposter syndrome person, to think of how they would think around a certain thing. Definitely be open and vulnerable about it. I feel this way. Express that fear to the people in your life so that they know where you're coming from. Really look at your comparison, like how you're comparing yourself to other people, and rein that in. If you genuinely feel that you are not good enough or you don't have the skill set, then go and get the skill. Go and do the training. Go and upskill yourself. Go and get the experience, because that is a huge way to overcome imposter syndrome. And the confidence comes with experience.
Absolutely.
So there is an element of needing to be a bit real here about what are you actually capable of. And don't lie about that stuff. So if you're feeling less than, go out and get the experience and train yourself more so you don't second guess yourself. And a big indicator of imposter syndrome is negative self-talk. So if you are finding yourself that self-defeating, I'm not good enough, nobody's going to care, who's going to want to listen to me, start replacing your internal dialogue with, and it's called reframing, you know. So, well, I'm not good enough, well, I'm absolutely willing to learn and grow, you know. Who's going to want to listen to me? I have a completely unique perspective and voice that might change somebody's life, you know. So take the negative self-talk, shift it to positive, and stop always foreseeing the failure. Like absolutely. Visualize the success, not the failure, and actually see yourself overcoming rather than focusing on the falling, because energy flows where attention goes. And if your attention is on the negative, I can't, it won't, that will become the self-fulfilling prophecy, and then you won't. But if I can and I will, that's where the energy is going to shift. So be very aware of that internal dialogue that goes on.
Leah, thank you so much. Really great discussion.
Pleasure.
Awesome.